Welcome back to the Bleeding Hearts Club, where we alchemize pain into something beautiful together. I'm your co-host, Shroot. I'm an astrologer who uses astrology as a self-reflective tool for healing and growth, and this is my co-host.
Hi, y'all. My name is Stevie. I am a tarot reader, death doula, therapist, and just a silly goose. Nice to have y'all back.
Love you. Love being a silly goose with you. Um, Today we are chatting anger, and this is a topic that is really difficult for Stevie and I. We are Libras. What's anger? We don't know her. And the episode before this, we talked about resentment. And I think as Scorpio dominant Libras, the two of us, resentment is a place we are much more comfortable and familiar hanging out in. But actually being with our anger is something that we really struggle with. So we decided to talk about this against our own comfort zone. So bear with us as we push through our discomfort because we think it is really important to have these conversations and also that this is something that we are in process with and we are working through ourselves. And so I wanted to talk about this because I wanted to be in the ring with this thing that I'm struggling with. So, first we'll start with our relationship to anger. With me, I have a really complicated relationship to anger. I think anger was something that um, I don't think I had healthy exposure to anger growing up, where I didn't really get to see um, a multi-dimensional view of anger. It was kind of something that was used as like a power move over me, and being the target of somebody else's anger made me feel powerless. It made me feel like I didn't have control over my life. And it scared me. It scared me a lot. And so I kind of grew to become afraid of my own anger. And I think it was really easy for me to channel anger into injustice. And so I think this is something that a lot of people do when they get into social justice, is that when you don't have a healthy relationship with your own anger, especially when it comes to anger as a protective mechanism for yourself, it can be a little bit easier to grapple with using your own anger as a protective mechanism for other people. So I know that that was actually how I got into social justice, where at a very young age, I was seeing how people were treating autistic peers of mine and, bullying kids. And I was very against that. And I was able to use my anger in a way to stand up for other people. And it was really interesting because I found that because I was, perceived by the world as a girl, especially at that age, a young girl, I never found that my anger was ever taken seriously. So I kind of learned that to me, from a young age, anger was something that wasn't, my anger was not something that was valid. It wasn't something that was taken seriously. It wasn't a tool that was effective in my arsenal to deter other people. Like, so the kind of purpose of anger being, a protective mechanism for us, something that halts, other people, or something that removes an obstacle. It was never like that for me. I never was able to experience that because my anger never worked in that way. And so I kind of very quickly learned that um, if I took much less direct routes to stop bullying or to protect myself, I found, Libra ways to do it, where it was like, I guess some people could call it manipulative, where I was more interested in achieving the outcome than I was expressing my emotion. And so I would be able to convince other people to stop bullying, or, convince people to lay off me. And I would do it in ways that were a lot more roundabout and a lot more disarming than they were aggressive. And well, I'm still an aggressive person. It's just that they were less angry, I guess you could say. And so, um, I kind of felt like for me personally, there was no point being angry because it never got me anywhere. And so I didn't really have a good relationship to my anger. Occasionally if somebody pushed me, well past a point of my own tolerance, I would like black out and scream at them, like, you could take me to a really dark place. And so I just kind of felt like, why bother? Like, I don't want to be there. I kind of grew to be like afraid of that within myself. And so it's been like the last, this last year, it's been a project. Stevie, in our joint tarot session for us last year, they were like, you need to check in with your anger. You need to get comfy with it. And I was like, okay, I've been putting it off. So this past year, I've been really in the weeds with being present with my anger, learning to not feel afraid of it anymore, and really healing the part of me that never really got my anger honored or listened to, and understanding that like as an adult, it's my responsibility to honor that. And I don't know that I have solutions, but I'm definitely in the room with my anger, and I think it has helped me connect with myself in a much deeper way and to feel like cultivate a lot more self-compassion within myself because I am not dismissing parts of myself. So to me, it's like maybe I don't have like perfect progress and I have an advanced relationship of anger to share with you all, but it's more like I have a deeper understanding of myself and a deeper relationship to myself because I am no longer pushing away the parts of myself that I'm most afraid of. So that's mine. What about you, Stevie?
What a journey.
I'm tired.
Yeah, literally. I don't know if any other Libras are out there who shy away from anger or expressing their anger. If you do, yeah, we want to know. We want to hear from you. Or, if that just resonates with anybody, we just in general want to know what your relationship with anger is like. I have a very complicated relationship with anger. I am very much more comfortable living in resentment, which I know they're not too far off from each other, but um, I think I grew up exposed to a lot of anger being expressed outwardly at each other, a lot of stomping, a lot of yelling, a lot of mumbling. Yeah, great times. Lots of cleaning. Lots of cleaning. Oh my gosh. And as a kid, obviously that was something that was modeled for me, something that I saw quite a bit. And so I would do the same thing. Um, Somewhere down the line though, I don't know. I think my anger just turned into resentment, like deep rooting resentment. And in high school, specifically, I had just reached the point where I described myself as a short fuse. Anything would make me angry. And people were scared of me in middle school and high school. And I think it was just because I was like a little emo kid and not everyone was familiar or comfortable with that aesthetic.
It was not
But
cool
I
back
think they can
then.
also, yeah, yeah, I was heavily bullied for that aesthetic. Um, but whatever, we persisted and look where we are now. Still emo.
Still emo.
And well, my cousin just secured the My Chemical Romance tickets for us for next July. And I'm really happy, but yeah, it was a journey to get here. Um, yeah, in high school, I think people could really feel the angry energy that I was carrying. And yeah, it was a time. But at some point, I decided to start going to this Jōdo Shinshū temple, like Japanese Buddhist temple in my neighborhood. And yeah, I don't know what I was expecting from it or anything, but it became such a saving grace for me that introduced me to practices like mindfulness and concepts like loving kindness. And I don't even know, like, I can't even remember them anymore. But I think one, the ceremony and community of going to temple and like smelling the incense and offering the incense, praying, chanting, and getting a message that was so, I don't know, eye opening for me. It just gave me a lot of different perspectives on things. And I'll never forget the time that our, she was called a reverend, um, our reverend Shoyo Taniguchi. Oh my gosh. She came up to me. I don't know. It was like at the end of the service, and like the reverend and other folks would just be like standing next to the place where you offer incense, and they would say like, hi, nice to see you again, like just like chit chat with you. um I offered incense and I usually just left, but she stopped me And she gave me a printout of this like diagram, all like of some sort. I think it was like causes and conditions or a concept like that. But basically, she told me like when you're angry and you hold on to anger, like it just builds. It just like consumes you and it really only hurts you. And when you release that or when you like engage with it in a different way, like it doesn't have that same hold on you. Like you can let it come forth and let it pass away, and that's it. And yeah, I don't know, because I was not showing up as like an angry person in that space. I felt so calm and peaceful. And I think I really felt seen by her and understood by her without ever really having to disclose anything about my life or, my home or anything. And that really stuck with me. Um, and my relationship with anger has been so different. I went from going from a really short fuse, like I was angry, I was yelling, I don't know, I was on something. I was on one for sure. And then my relationship to anger just shifted and I was more calm and grounded. And I think somewhere along the way too, that ended up being to a fault because then I wouldn't really have any expression of anger. And that built up and I think just transmuted into resentment or passive aggressiveness or other ways that weren't actually like direct communication or processing my anger in maybe even a somatic way. But yeah, and it's still a journey. I'm still trying to build a relationship with it and understand it. And yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious about like how far it goes back generationally. And, I know that it didn't start with me and it didn't start with, my parents or even their parents. And I'm sure I can also trace it back to, colonialism and forced religion and imperialism and all those things. But yeah, I'm curious about those ancestors and what they were dealing with and just how it snowballed into this. But yeah, that's mine. That's my
Yeah.
anger.
Oh, new Stevie Lord just dropped. Okay, Temple. Changed your life very casually. I love that. Yeah, I want to invite you, listener. What's your relationship to anger? And, what has your journey been with your anger if it has evolved over time? What exposure to anger did you have as a child? Um, you know, I love that Stevie brought in the ancestor piece. That's a big one. I think on that note, something really impactful, I think maybe that did influence my decision to be like, well, anger doesn't get me anywhere. I'm not even gonna bother, like to just put it on the shelf, was that I had kind of been told about my grandfathers growing up and how they used to be really angry men. And which, they were coming of age in India, newly forming as a country, post colonial times. And I had the way it had been communicated to me was that essentially they both at some point in their lives had said, "Hey, like I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to be like this anymore." And that they weren't like that anymore. And so, for example, the grandfathers that I knew, were never. I've only seen one grandfather angry once, and oh my God, that scared me so bad. I was like, wow, I'm so glad he was never angry at me like that, because Jesus Christ. But other than that, I had never seen him angry before, and I didn't feel like he held on to his anger either. Like he was just a really happy dude. He was happy with his life. By the time I came around, so I think it was really powerful to me to hear that these men at some point in their lives, which, they had much less access to information than us, much less access to emotional literacy than us. And then they both had very different lives and different experiences, but they both reached a conclusion themselves to be like, I don't want to treat people like this. I don't want to be angry like this. And I want to do something different. And I think that was always really inspiring to me because I think when people get older, people can get really entrenched in their ways. And that was always a reminder to me that like it is a choice. What we want to entrench ourselves into is a choice. And I think that it was really inspiring for me to watch my grandfathers choose to entrench into joy and choose to entrench into comfort and choose to entrench into relaxing as opposed to being so kind of like wound up and super tight all the time. But yeah, I love that. That's worth thinking about.
Wow, a choice. It doesn't feel like it sometimes, that's for sure. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, I feel like my understanding with anger or of anger changed a lot too when I was at UC Santa Cruz and I was studying psychology. And I took a class, I think my senior year, on feelings and emotions.
Oh, wow.
And I loved that class so much, so freaking much. I learned so much. But I gained a deeper appreciation for anger through that class because I could understand it not as like a negative or harmful or destructive emotion. Anger was presented as just information, just like all your other emotions that come up for you. These are just like the word that comes to mind is instructions. Like it's a notification, it's an alert to you that okay, anger specifically like, hey, something is not okay. Something is wrong, something doesn't feel right and you need to take some steps to address the situation. That like in itself really changed me and how I tune into my anger and do something about it. Now that I'm angry or when I become angry, I'm like, okay, n- now I can see something's going on. Let me just check in myself or check in with myself. What am I actually angry about? And where does this come from? And, like what are the different factors that are being entangled into this onion of anger and trauma and all of the things. One of the things that I learned was that anger is one of six primary emotions, and that is research from Paul Ekman. So, like the primary emotions are the first emotions that people experience in response to a stimulus. So, let's say that Shroot and I are talking, and all of a sudden, I don't know, maybe Shroot says something that feels really activating for me, which has never happened, but like I'll open the possibility
Yeah.
that that could happen. Um, and my initial response is like, I cannot like already imagine like my face and my ears get hot and red, and I'm like, just like taken aback and I can't even talk and yeah, I just want to go. That would be like my initial instinctual, like primal response to a stimulus, which was something that happened in the conversation together. The other ones are what are they? They're happiness, sadness, fear, anger, surprise, and disgust, which, yeah, disgust and like surprise always tripped me up. I'm still trying to understand this. But anger can also just, again, indicate a series of other emotions. Like it's so tangled. All our emotions are entangled and not really compartmentalized. They're always interacting with each other. So when we're angry, there can also be some indications of other emotions that are underneath the surface. Like maybe Shroot says that thing and I get angry, but I'm also angry because I'm really sad that, there was a wound there, a traumatic wound or a painful wound in some way that is being activated. And so maybe I feel wronged and I feel sad. And it doesn't take away from the anger or minimize or invalidate it just because other emotions are there. But, there's still indications. Anger is an indication. So it's easy to see a person's anger and have your own response to it. But I think what happens when anger is present is that our defenses go up. we want to protect ourselves, we want to defend ourselves. Um, maybe we want to fight back, or maybe we want to run away. Whoa, maybe we want to run away. That was really hard to say. Um, and so when we're coming at each other like that with our defenses up, it can be really difficult to see what's behind that, what's behind the wall, behind the guard, which could be like wanting to be understood, wanting to be affirmed, wanting connection, wanting softness. And there's so much beyond anger. And I feel like there's so much softness behind it and so much love behind it too, and just wanting to, I don't know, feel understood and be understood. But yeah, just some things that I wanted to bring in. What do you think, Shroot?
Yeah. I think it's I think it's really helpful to kind of really sit with those base primary emotions, and to really think about, what is your relationship to all of those emotions? What is your comfort level, your discomfort level? Where do you feel those emotions in your body? What triggers those emotions in your life? That kind of thing. Because I think there's a wealth of, as Stevie said, kind of information around all those emotions and what they can teach you about yourself, and where you're at. Because I think emotions are I love that you said a notification. That's such a good visual of like in this moment, that's the notification. Like that's such a good way of thinking about it. I think especially for me as a person who fears my anger, thinking of it as something as, I'm not scared of a notification on my phone. Like, um, that's so helpful to think about it like that. And so I wanted to talk and hold a little space for um everybody who is like, I'm not really that angry. Well then I have a question for you. Are you anxious? Because I saw this really eye-opening TikTok, when they say you build your FYP brick by brick, like, oh, this was a hell of a brick. Where it basically was talking about, this was a psychologist, Dr. J. I'm gonna link his TikTok in the show notes because it racked me because I had never heard this before, but he basically argues that um people who deal with a lot of anxiety, part of the reason for that anxiety could be that they're not angry enough. And that anxiety is about imagining perceived obstacles, and anger is about obliterating obstacles. And so if we're anxious, especially consistently anxious, it's worth asking ourselves, are we angry enough? Because um, it's possible that being more angry, expressing our anger more, can lead to outcomes that then decrease our anxiety. And I was kind of so mind blown by that because it's kind of true that, like, at least for me, I know that, like, if I sit there and stew in my anger and I don't actually use it and communicate it and act on the boundary my anger is asking me to draw, then yeah, my anxiety goes up like crazy. Like my anxiety will skyrocket and I will start forming all types of scenarios in my head, and I will kind of, that anger, the energy that anger generates within me will start running in circles because I've given it nowhere to go. So I think it's worth asking yourself, if you're a really anxious person, like, can you get angry about some stuff? Like, what is, your top three things that you're mad about? And to really see if you can reconnect that relationship to anger and go on this uncomfortable journey with me because I know it's difficult, but I do think that, in the last 5 years, I've made a real commitment. I didn't come at it from the perspective of knowing that what I was doing was reconnecting to my anger. It wasn't clear to me that that's what I was doing until Stevie literally said it and spelled it out for me. But when I started saying no to people, in 2019, I tell this story all the time, but I kind of started doing like a little mantra for myself every year. And my mantra for 2019 was that I meet my body's needs without judgment because I was floundering with my health and I was floundering trying to meet the expectations and the demands of everybody else at the expense of my health. And I realized that, I had been sick and bedridden at that point since 2020, 24, no, 2015. And so from 2015 to 2019, my health had only gotten worse, really. And I wasn't getting anywhere. And I was like, okay, like this has to be the forefront of my mind. This has to be the thing that I center everything around. So I need to meet my body's needs without judgment. And that means that I can't be judging my body. But more importantly, in my case, I can't be letting other people's judgments about my body orient how I live my life. I need to center my own needs. And so what I started doing as a result was, and this was something that nothing in my life before this had given me the courage to do this, but I started saying no. I started saying, okay, professor, I'm not turning in that paper on time, and I have the disability accommodations to back me up. You can't dock me for that. I'm not coming to section on time, and you can't dock me on attendance for that. I have the accommodation. Um, I'm taking an incomplete in this class, and I'm not 19 years old. You can't think that I'm just going to fail the class because I'm taking an incomplete. I will give you the work when it's due with that incomplete, and I will get a 98% in your class because I'm doing, like, I know myself. I'm advocating for myself. This is what my body needs. I'm not coming home for spring break, mom and dad. Like, I can't handle the disruption on my health of the travel. I'm not changing the way that I live and act, with my roommate. Like, so I set all these boundaries with people in my life who were constantly kind of forcing me outside of my comfort zone and were pissing me off. And I found that, like, through the process, I was absolutely terrified. But when I look back, it's like there was a level of strength that saying no and that acting on my anger and exhibiting boundaries, the strength that that produced within me, like, started etching away at my anxiety. And it started, I found new things to be anxious about because, neurology is a little more difficult than that. Anxiety is very familiar. My body was like, well, we could be anxious about something else, don't worry. But I think it was really helpful for me to understand that, like, in a lot of ways, if anxiety is like this, like, brush debris building up in our brain, anger can be kind of a sword that hacks through that and that clears away that debris. And so to really, like, understand anger's utility as a tool, I really wanted to name that.
Dang. There's so much to say.
I
I
know.
wish we could teach a whole class about this.
We should, yeah. Let us know
Yeah.
if you would be interested in something like that because I think being in community space around anger is really important, especially because those of us in social justice spaces, in organizing spaces, I think um, we need to understand the utility of anger, the value of anger, but then also how anger is dividing us, and how anger is inhibiting our ability to organize and to come together. So I think there's a lot to be said on that. So if you're interested in something like that, DM us on Instagram or send us an email. It's splittingheartsclub.pod. Either that's our Instagram handle or at gmail.com for our email. Um, we would love to hear from you. What are your thoughts about all this? Because there's so much to say.
And let us know what you're angry about.
Yeah.
I would love that.
Mhm. Absolutely. I also think I also wanted to hold a little bit of space for anybody who is quick to anger. Anybody who really struggles with their anger, who is very intimately familiar with it. You kind of have the opposite side of the spectrum from what I first described of, like, oh, people who are like, I'm not really that angry, but I'm very anxious. But you're like, no, I'm angry. Like, I'm there. And I would invite you to, think about what Stevie had said earlier about primary emotions. Like, you know, is there any other emotions that live underneath your anger? Are you using your anger to express grief, fear? Do you have a lack of control? Are you feeling overwhelmed? What are the emotions that are living underneath your anger? And what are the emotions that are in relationship to your anger? And what are the emotions that can trigger your anger? And um, is anger the emotion that you are most comfortable expressing? Because oftentimes I've seen, and this was what shaped my relationship to anger, was that people in my life didn't really have any other relationship to other emotions, and the only way that they knew how to express those emotions was through anger. And so, um, I think broadening your relationship to these other emotions, especially when you're not angry or triggered. Like when you're in a calmer state, being honest with yourself, or maybe even seeking community support about this, whether that's professional, mental health support, whether that's community support with, loved ones that you feel like you can trust and open up to, having honest conversations about where you're at with, really, more, you could start with the primary ones that Stevie had mentioned, but, you know, the emotions that you can kind of tie to, oh, I express my grief through anger. I express my through anger. I express my lack of control through anger. I express my fear through anger. And trying to see like what are the other pathways that can be available to you to express those things. So, I think a pretty good exercise is the one that Stevie had mentioned last time of like, taking stock of your emotions on any given day and saying, hey, like, what am I feeling? What's the thing that triggered this? How severe is this feeling showing up for me? Is it really strong? Is it pretty mild? Do I feel disconnected from it? Um, what is your, like, where do you feel it in your body? Is there any sensation associated with it? Is it burning? Is it sharp? Is it dull? Is it numbing? And if you could characterize it, that was what we talked about in our last episode. What would the character of this emotion be? How is it showing up? What movie character does it remind you of, or anything like that? And really try to just build out like a little dictionary for yourself of your emotions, and really try to get more comfortable with not only writing these things down, but sharing them with other people. And especially when you're not actively triggered or actively angry, because you will be able to draw on this expanded language to communicate your emotions when you are activated, if you've done this kind of like homework in advance, essentially. So I really encourage you to take those journaling prompts or take those kind of opportunities for exploration and really be with um, these other emotions and see if there's other ways that you can express these emotions that isn't just always quick to anger, as your comfort zone. So.
How do you connect or process to your anger?
Mm,
How?
yeah. I think so funny you asked that. When I was a kid, I was very much like, I want to get in a fight. I want to fight somebody. I want to fight. I want to fight. Like I used to always say in high school, like I would love to, I was like, I need to get into a fight before I turn 18, and there's real consequences to that. I was like, I gotta get into a fight. I gotta. And I never got to, which really annoyed me. My last fight was like, I was in elementary school. But it was very satisfying. So, but it wasn't even like an angry fight. It was a guy being like, get off my lawn. And I was like, I'm literally not on your lawn. I'm on your neighbor's lawn who's my friend. Like, and he wanted to fight. I was like, okay, I'll give you a fight. So that was like funny to me. I wasn't angry. So I never really got to like channel my energy, my anger in an actual fight. But then when I got to 18 and realized that I didn't want to get any kind of like legal consequences for that desire of mine to get in a fight, I was like, I'm gonna go to the club and I'm gonna dance away all my anger. So I used to take all that pent up agitation and I would go to the club or a concert or whatever, and I would just dance and I would feel I would basically leave it all in that room and I would leave it all there. And I think that was one of the earliest ways that I was alchemizing my emotions. And it was definitely, surprisingly, in one of the most self-destructive eras of my life, one of the healthiest things I had ever done for myself because I was not motivated by substances. I was not motivated by anything other than the love of being able to transmute my emotions in a safe space. And also have a good time while doing it. And also that it wasn't destructive, it wasn't hurting anybody else, it wasn't hurting myself. It was one of the safest things that I could have ever done. And so I was like once a month, I was like, I need to go to the club because I'm gonna lose my mind otherwise. And so then I became disabled, and that was when things got really difficult because it was like, okay, I'm bedridden. Like now what do I do? Like, and so I just checked out. I was not channeling my anger, and it really festered inside of me. And so it's something that only recently, as my health outcomes have improved, that I've been able to come back to and say, okay, like I need to actively figure this out. And so I've been leaning into somatic practices. So one thing that's really nice that a friend gifted me is it's called a Buddha board, but like I don't love that name. It's essentially a little artist canvas. It's like this big. It's a tiny one. But it's you only use water for it, and the water evaporates. Like it's like water painting or on a reusable canvas essentially. So the water dries up pretty quickly, and then the more water you use, the longer it takes to dry up. So you can see different levels of it disappearing, what you've drawn. So I really liked that because again, if I'm fearing my anger and I'm fearing, what really sitting in it can do, there's something so calming to that fear of mine about channeling all my anger into scribbling on this board or writing out the things that are pissing me off or whatever. And watching it, I literally just stare at it and watch the water evaporate. And it's really calming to do that. Another thing I like to do is there's this activity that I saw. I'm gonna link the TikTok that I got these ideas from in the show notes. But a tense and release. So you kind of tense every single muscle in your body and then you release. And you kind of keep doing that for a little bit. Or I will put on some like really angry music and I will like stomp around. Like I love stomping. I feel like stomping is such a good, like it always reminds me of a kid, like huffing and puffing and stomping. And, I think it's kind of a little bit to our detriment that we've infantilized that practice because it actually is a really powerful regulating somatic practice. Because I think, yeah, it is so important that we get our anger out and we use our body to do it. And so those were the things that I've been leaning on. And it's really important for me. I'm hypermobile. I've got chronic illness stuff and um I can injure myself if I'm not careful when it comes to using my body as a tool to express my anger. And so these were ways that I found that like allow me to still be in my body, be in that rage, but then not harm myself as a result. So what about you, Stevie?
Wow. Yeah. When you said stomping, I was like, my trauma.
I love a good stomp.
But I'm sure it feels really cathartic to stomp.
Yeah,
I
feels great.
I'm not there yet.
Feels great. If you have some stairs like in your apartment complex, just like really huffing and puffing down those stairs, it feels great.
Up down the stairs.
Yeah.
Literally. How do I process my anger? For the most part, not very well. But when I will light up a group chat, that's for sure. With Shroot and our sweet pal, Andrew, or whenever I get to like be with my friends in person or talk to them on the phone. Like I have these two friends who I meet with honestly every few months. Like it sucks, but every time we see each other, we spend hours together and we're just catching each other up and like hyping each other up, like saying the most outlandish that like we aren't really able to say in other spaces. And we're just a trio of therapists. Like, so it's very cathartic and also very affirming. Um, but for the most part, like I think I'm in my head a lot. I do a lot of cognitive processing, or I will try to write it out, or maybe I'll even like pull tarot cards. But honestly, that is still very cognitive and something that I'm learning more just like as I continue my training as a therapist is how important it is to there's like top down and bottom up like processing. So top down would be like emotional regulation, more thought-based interventions like activating your upper brain centers like executive functioning and the prefrontal cortex and things like that. And so it helps to down regulate the intensity of things like anger, fear, abandonment, and just like in general other big emotional states. But and there's also a need for bottom up processing, which is accessing more of the body's like senses and those feelings. So doing things to kind of build your capacity to be with the sensations of anger and allow it to guide the process. So like if you are feeling angry and again like there's a lot of like you're finding yourself being fidgety or like wanting to move around, like you really don't have to do grounding exercises. Like emotional processing doesn't have to be done in like a cool, calm, and collected way. It can be just like flowing with that emotion because imagine it like this emotion, like these things are coming up, like your body is kind of activating in a certain way. And if you try to, I don't know, like breathe or put on a meditation or something like that, you're kind of just stuffing it down or trying to take on this role of like a behaved, regulated person, but doesn't always need that. So, like, bring yourself back to your body. You can do some like self applied touch, like on your arms, like wiggling your fingers and your toes or putting your hands on your face and just reminding yourself, like, okay, I'm a person, I'm in my body, and like I'm going to ground into my body and I'm going to do what I need. Like for 30 or 60 seconds or whatever the heck, you can just shake like stand up if you can, shake your hands, just like rock yourself, do whatever you can, like use the energy that's flowing through your body to continue letting the energy flow through you and flow out of you. Um, yeah, like you need both. If you are like thinking heavy, I would definitely suggest, and this is something for me too, because I don't do it enough, like just using your body to process whatever emotions are coming up for you. Emotions, feelings, like they're meant to come and go. So you never know what just spending a minute and a half with your emotions in this way could do, and just how much things that can shift. What? You know what I mean?
That makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is something that I want to try doing more, is just moving, rocking, fidgeting in a maybe intentional way. But I think before that, Shroot, like years ago, you told me, like, you suggested that I connect to the music that I listen to as like an angry teenager and sing it, which I feel the most comfortable doing in my car when I'm by myself. Like I will listen to the angry music and I will sing it out loud with the intention of like, I am activating my throat chakra. I'm activating, like, I don't know, where's the diaphragm? What chakra is that?
The solar
Like,
plexus.
yes,
Yeah,
I'm activating that because I am singing.
sure are.
Yeah, and just letting it release that way. Because I'm also yelling at very loud levels, which I can't do in my day-to-day interactions with people. So, yeah, yeah, that's me.
Ah, yeah, for me, the car music is it almost like 99% of the time has to be Paramore because Paramore, I think, perfectly captures like not just the anger and the angst, but like specifically, I love, Hayley Williams as a female vocalist. Like I just feel so connected to her expression of it, where I don't feel like that when I listen to bands fronted by men or non women. I don't know the right term because I'm definitely not assuming that everybody is a man, but um I just connect so much with Hayley Williams's rage, and I just feel so like I can channel mine through her. So for me, it's Paramore, and I'm always screaming Paramore lyrics, like, and I'm just like at a stoplight, and I always wonder if other people can hear me because cars are not like soundproof, like so I'm just it is what it is, like. But I wanted to disclaim that the exercises that Stevie's suggesting and using your body as we've been suggesting, um, one, if this is not a practice you do regularly, I think it's worth being patient with yourself about um opting into doing it because the things that I suggested that I do is not something that it took me years to get there, like literally years. And it wasn't even just the physical health limitations. It was the mental block that I had to engaging my body when it came to my anger, the fear, and everything. And so, you know, be in the ring with it. Give yourself patience, but keep trying. If you can do it for a minute, do it for a minute. If you can do it for even 10 seconds, do it for 10 seconds, that kind of thing, because I've found that now it is something that I reach out for. If I get off a call and I'm upset about the call and I know that I need to down regulate a little bit instead of just like, scrolling on my phone and ignoring how I'm upset and then basically not sleeping as a result because I can never calm down enough to go to sleep, I will go dance. I'll put on some angry music and I'll stomp around and I'll dance around. And so give yourself a little bit of time, keep staying in the ring, keep trying. And then two, accept that it's going to take like at least 15, 20 minutes for you to see if it worked or not. Our bodies do not respond on that instant rapid rate that our minds do. So, any of these activities you do it and you're like, it's not working. I'm still feeling like crap. Like, you know, check in again in 30 minutes. Like, don't count yourself out yet, because I know for me, 20 minutes later, I'm definitely not feeling as angry as I was, or I'm definitely not feeling as activated as I was. So for me, it always works. So I always encourage you to just like, if you gotta like put a timer on your phone and scroll and distract yourself, do it. But check in again in that 20 minutes and just take a temperature check of like, okay, do I feel better? Do I feel worse? Do I feel different? Like, what's different. So really just try to be patient with yourself through that process because our bodies do not move at the speed of our minds. And so when we are living in such a mind-heavy world, we're very comfortable with the speed that our mind moves, and you got to give your body a chance to catch up. Yeah,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thanks for bringing that in. It's hard, y'all. Be gentle and patient with yourself. Give yourself a lot of grace. It's all about practice. Hmm.
Okay, let's get into the horoscope. So we are in the swing of Sag season, and I know November was rough, November was heavy, November was painful. November has left us in a lot of feelings that are really uncomfortable and forced us to face a lot of things about ourselves, about each other that maybe we didn't want to face. But, November is almost behind us. We are entering December soon, and we are in SAG season. And so I kind of wanted to open up this horoscope by naming, the reason that we chose to do resentment as an episode and then anger, and specifically resentment episode at the end of Scorpio season and anger episode at the beginning of SAG season is because one of the things Sagittarius energy and people with Sagittarius placements really excel at is burning right through their anger. They don't really believe in resentment. They don't really have time for resentment. They are one of those, they're in that following of Scorpio into Sagittarius. I don't got time for resentment. I don't got time. Like, they're not afraid of anger. They're not afraid of expressing their anger. Sagittarius energy is really committed to simply being bigger than whatever is in their way. And I think that they really recognize the utility of anger as a tool to make themselves bigger than anything in their way. And I think that Sagittarius people, anger is most often associated with Aries. And that makes sense because Aries is about that outward expression, that aggression, the kind of like momentary instance of anger. Is very much Aries associated, but I wanted to talk about it in SAG season because I think Sagittarius people really understand the utility of anger and the value of what anger can do for us. And I think that Sagittarius people are really good at looking at their emotions from the perspective of what can this emotion do for me? And how can this emotion allow me to be bigger than my obstacles and to get to where I'm trying to go? And they're not really interested in getting caught up in emotions in a way that stops them. And I find that so inspiring and powerful as a Scorpio dominant person who gets stuck all the time. And I find that, Sagittarius is actually a sign that I used to have the most beef with because I resented that ability. I thought that Sagittarius people didn't care. And I thought that that came across as fake or that came across as flaky. And, I used to say everything that people say about Geminis, Sagittarius is the real people that they should say that about. And then when I really thought, sat and thought about it, I thought about it and was like, every single door that's ever opened for me that expanded my life and that carried me forward was opened by a Sagittarius. So like can I be mad or should I just be, have gratitude for that? And so I really want to encourage people, when you get stuck in your emotions, and especially anger as an emotion, and it kind of can turn into resentment when it's unexpressed. It's like, in what ways can you use it as fuel to be bigger than the thing that's stopping you? And to really allow this season specifically, as we're coming off of a really painful election here in America, and we're moving into a world of, great uncertainty around the world in general. I really encourage you to take a page from that Sagittarius book and see how you can grow bigger than these things, and see how you can open yourself up to understanding that there is space for you in the world that is being built, and that sometimes you have to be bigger than the things that are trying to prevent you from taking up that space. So, yeah. What are your thoughts? What's the tarot looking like, Stevie?
Oh my goodness. Okay. Shroot and I mentioned this before, but like it's harder for us to tap into anger, embodying anger, expressing anger, which is why when I pulled the tarot, I was confused. I thought it was going to be rageful, but it's not at all. Um, I guess I'll get into it and I'll try my best to convey these messages. But the first one, the
What's
first
the
card
deck?
oh yeah. I'm using the Marigold Tarot deck. Woohoo. Like I usually do. She's just that girl.
It's the perfect deck. No notes.
God. Yeah. I love it so much. So yeah, I'm using the Marigold Tarot deck. also because they just cut right to the core, right to the bone. The first card that I pulled for this episode was the Six of Rings, which I will hold up in the video and also post pictures of. Um, this card, this is why I was so tripped up, because the intention was to get some more insight or a message about anger at this time. And the cards, like key themes are giving and receiving and sharing wealth and generosity and charity. So you could imagine my confusion. But maybe it's because I'm just so used to understanding arrow anger from the lens of resentment and like giving too much and not getting anything in return and all of the things that go with that. And I feel like in talking about anger and processing anger, I go back to this thought of anger is a notification, it is a call to action in many ways. And I think the call to action is to look beyond anger and envision what life is beyond the anger, what solutions or what relationships and connection can look like beyond the anger that is present. The anger needs to be there because it tells us something needs to change in our relationship, something needs to change within us or the situation. But what goes beyond that? I think that's really hard to envision sometimes, like when the anger is so present and underlying or overshadowing. What is our actual goal? What do we actually want? Um, so I feel like this card is like getting us to think about our why. Like why? Why are we what first of all, why are we angry? Because there's a reason for it. There are other experiences and emotions intermixed in it. And also like what is the goal? What is the end goal here? Um, I wrote down some questions specifically with this card because I feel like I don't have answers right now. I don't have answers for you. I don't have answers for me. But some of the things that came to mind when just like exploring these topics were, where did you learn how to give to others so generously? And what comes with that? What do you gain? What do you get from sharing and giving to other people? What does it cost you? I'm sure we already know. We can tap into what it costs us. So maybe more so like, what do you receive from it? What do you get from it? Why do you do it? Aside from anger and resentment and feeling like you have to. What are the other things that are in there? What are the boundaries that you have about sharing? How do you do it intentionally and sustainably? If you do that in that way at all. And how does generosity influence your relationship with trust? Or how does it help you trust people, trust yourself? Um, and what's your relationship like with receiving? Because it's, again, reciprocity. Going back to, gosh, one of our first episodes, second episode, I don't know, about reciprocity. Our relationships, they need that in order to sustain. You can't just be giving to other people without receiving in return. I don't know who I heard this from, but it really stuck with me. Probably someone on TikTok, where I get all my information. But someone said that if all you do is give to other people without allowing them to give to you or allowing yourself to receive support in return, you don't care about reciprocity. You just want to be important. And there's so much to that. And I'm just going to leave that there as a little seed to plant for you to reflect on and water or whatever the hell you have to do. But I don't know. I don't even know what to say about that. Um, yeah. Maybe I'll just leave that there. Again, I don't have answers for you in this little bit, but maybe Shroot does. I don't
Yeah,
know. What's
I
the
do.
asterisk?
Yeah, so we actually are um entering a retrograde season. Mercury has just gone retrograde on the 25th, and it will be retrograde until what's the date? December 15th. And this retrograde is taking place in Sagittarius itself. And so on December 6th, Mars is also going retrograde in Leo. And so again, this is like some very heavy fire energy that we have going on between Sagittarius being lit up and Leo being lit up with these retrogrades. So they're kind of asking us to um broaden our thinking basically, and to kind of, it's a cue for us that we need to go bigger. So if we are zoomed in on our anger, on our resentment, on the fears, on all these things that we're zoomed into, there is a bigger picture that we're missing out on. And so this card, I think, and this, next 2 weeks, this kind of energy in the air right now is offering us this opportunity to take a breath and look around and see what's bigger, what's beyond these things that we're kind of stuck in. So I really encourage people to do your best to zoom out right now, and see that there is joy, that there is laughter, and also that like conflict in healthy environments, in communities that are invested in each other's well-beings, conflict is generative, because conflict tells us where do we need to do things differently. And so on the other side of conflicts and through conflicts that are prompted through anger, there is reciprocity, there is increased community, there is joy, there is all these wonderful things that we can draw on. And so I really encourage people to look for that which is beyond the emotion that you're really stuck in right now, and just try to be curious and open. So, yeah, that's what I'd say.
Cool. So much fire energy.
Yes. We
Oh
have
yeah.
a fire trine happening with the North Node in the sky finishing up in Aries, and then Sag lit up like a Christmas tree, and then Leo Mars. So this very, very fire heavy Sag season. So we're gonna feel that energy. We're gonna feel very uplifted. I've been describing it. I'm gonna say, I was going back and forth about whether I should say it, but I'm like, I'll say it. I've been describing the transition from November to December as in November we all took downers and we're having a bad time with the downers. But instead of waiting for them to wear off and go neutral, in December we took some uppers. So we are up from downers without the downers wearing off. And we can feel that kind of chaos within us, but it is chaos that can be harnessed for, generative outcomes. So just try to keep an open mind.
Hell yeah. What a ride.
Yes, absolutely.
Amazing. Okay. Well, that's good to know. That's great to know. The next card, which I feel like it's doing its thing. It's connecting to the astro. The next card I got is the star. The
Love.
star.
Ah, love that card.
Yeah, it's a good time. Oh, I have a sticker.
Ooh, ooh. Watashi
Okay.
wa sta. Sta. Sta.
When y'all place orders with 13th Press, they give you a postcard and now they're giving you a sticker. So I'm giving you a little peek at the sticker that I got from one of my recent orders, and it's
We
so
both
cool.
got the Mirror Oracle for our birthdays. So
Mhm.
I got the Death card in mine,
Like,
which I love.
I love the star too.
Yeah,
Hooray. Okay. Yeah, the star. It comes after, I think, the tower?
probably.
Question mark?
That's
Let's
on,
do a
I don't
quick
know.
Google search. The star after the tower. Mm-hmm. I think so. Yeah. Yeah, yeah,
There you
yeah.
go.
The star comes after the tower. Um, if y'all remember, the tower is like an upheaval. It is destruction. It is tearing it down, burning it to the ground, and starting over, questioning everything, rebuilding everything, letting go, starting fresh. What a time. And the star after it kind of serves as a sigh of relief having to hold your breath and brace yourself for the worst. And I'm sure, I don't know, if y'all have been going through a tower moment, I can imagine it's been rough. Again, November, what a wild ride. I don't even know what y'all are going through, but I can just imagine. I mean, November was a time in the United States
We
of
know what
America.
America's going through.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Much to say about that, but we won't right now. So the star, it offers some hope, inspiration, positivity, faith, renewal, just recuperating after crisis or after tragedy or yeah, the upheaval. Um, I wonder, I think like one of the questions that came up for me when I was looking at this card was, who are you when your anger isn't fully consuming you and how you relate with other people, how you understand other people? When I think of anger, and again, it's very tied to resentment, I'm thinking of like being wronged. And when you feel like you've been wronged, maybe you feel lower tolerance for people, disappointment, or just how they show up. You know, sometimes how people are in general, it doesn't jive with you and you hate them. And that's why people say, like, I hate everybody, but I love you, which I have feelings about. Um, yeah. So who are you beyond your anger? Coming back to what Shroot was saying, like zooming out, seeing the bigger picture of yourself. Who are you? Because it's just one part of you. Can you see that love was underneath the surface all along? This want to be understood, want to feel connected with other folks who matter to you and who you matter to. Yeah, I think this is a card that signifies opening your heart up to yourself, to other people, coming back to a generous spirit, sharing yourself with other people, connecting with them without the piece of, I don't know, resentment, anger, the things that are wounding or reactivating to you. I hope this makes sense. I hope this makes sense. What do you think, Shroot?
Yeah, I think this is really Sagittarius energy at its core. Like I think this is really what Sagittarius is all about, where I think Sagittarius energy really understands that chaos is a vehicle. You know, we don't have to get stuck in the chaos. We don't have to get trapped by it. We don't have to be um, having our fears weaponized against us into inaction when it comes to chaos. And I think that the way that Sagittarius energy um, navigates chaos with such clarity of thought and purpose is because they don't source their sense of stability from external sources. Sagittarius people are able to draw on the generative capacity of their own authenticity as the source that propels them beyond. So, understanding, I think that's where the star comes in, is that understanding, like, you know, who you are underneath all of the fear, all of the doubt, all of the anger, all of the resentment, all of the grief, all of the chaos, is a infinite source that you can tap into. And that infinite source is connected with our earth. It is connected with our universe. And that's something that you can call on to re-energize you. And so when it comes to times of chaos, there is a powerful opportunity for leveraging chaos to your own goals. And the only way that you would know how to do that is if you are looking inward. And so something I said online, which I think is really important to kind of keep in mind in times of chaos, is that um, self-trust is one of the most important things you can cultivate when times are chaotic and uncertain. Because in a world where, you know, we are largely being lied to, and I think everybody has their own paradigm of thought about what we're being lied to about, which is hikey driving me insane. But that's, you know, neither here nor there. So ultimately, it's like in a world where things are uncertain, we don't feel like there is a level of trust that we have in the systems that uphold us, in the ways that we connect with each other on a bigger picture beyond our communities that we feel safe with. So the most important thing that we can do is cultivate a sense of safety within ourselves. And so, if you have Sagittarius placements, you already know this. You're like, why water is wet, okay? But if you don't have Sagittarius placements, like I really encourage you to understand that we all have all 12 signs in our chart. Even if we don't have planets there, we have the ability to tap into all of these different energies. And so I encourage you these next 2 weeks to really go an active, well out of your way to um, tap into, finding a sense of courage and saying, you know what, I open myself up to new opportunities that await me through this chaos. And I navigate those opportunities with self-trust and self-compassion and honesty with myself, and trust that I am a generative source that can keep propelling me through all of this BS. So that's what I would say.
Wow. Now I'm trying to think, like, where is Sagittarius on my chart?
First house, second house, mostly second house.
It can be both.
Yeah, well, so it depends on your house system, right? So I practice with the Placidus house system, which means yes, it can be both, but a lot of people practice with the whole sign house system, which means no, it can't be both. So for you, it would be second house under Placidus because you're a Scorpio rising, and there can only be one. Or sorry, under whole sign, you'd be a Sagittarius second house, but under Placidus, I know mentally, I know you have both because you have Scorpio straddling your 12th and your first, and then Sagittarius straddling your first and your second.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Wait,
So
did you see Leo?
I didn't. No, he's in
Okay.
hidden. Yeah.
He's trying to
Um,
get out, but I'm not gonna let
you
him.
wanna? Okay, I was gonna say you can let him out if you want.
No.
Okay. But
Okay.
yeah, for you, if so SAG is in your second house, then it has to do with your resources. So chaos is actually a resource that's like underneath resentment is a well of creativity. And that's that Scorpio to Sag. So if you are able to get underneath that resentment, you'll find that chaos and uncertainty are some of your most powerful resources that propel you forward in ways that like are incredible. So they are a resource you can draw on.
Wow. I
Yeah.
love chaos a
Yeah.
little.
Yeah, there you go. That would be partially why. So
Wow, good to know. Thanks,
yeah.
Shroot.
Yeah.
Okay, you ready for this last card?
Let's do it.
Hooray. Okay, the last card is Ten of Cups.
Ah, one of my faves.
Ugh. Okay. Yeah. Some key themes for the Ten of Cups I wrote are blissful relationships, harmony, feeling alignment. Um, I'm sensing a theme here of what happens when you zoom out of the anger, but also like make space for your anger because it can be such a roadblock if you stay stuck there or ignore it or don't process it. It just builds up like a little volcano. Um, yeah. What happens when you make space for anger, like not just with the relationship with yourself and processing it, but what happens when you make space for other people's anger, to understand it, to be with it, to be on the receiving end of anger, but not in a way that is harmful necessarily, because anger is an important aspect of being a human and being in relation with other people. It's such a it's a basic emotion or like a primary emotion. And to deny that in other people and within ourselves, we're rejecting a really big part of us as humans. Um, yeah. So, what happens when you make that space for yourself, for each other? Yeah, beauty happens, hopefully, if it's safe, if it's done safely and with grace, because we can't really, I don't know, restrict other people's anger. I know sometimes for me, it can be really hard to witness other people being angry. And it can definitely activate my own feelings of anger and all of that stuff. But yeah, I feel like the more we make space for it, the more we process it on our own and together, we can really deepen our connections with other people and appreciate each other, see each other with our wounds, but also beyond our wounds. And yeah, and I think it's going to allow us to make us or to help us feel closer and more understood by each other. Instead of pushing each other away or rejecting each other, we get closer. Yeah. So if you're feeling like things are shifting in your relationships with people, maybe in a good way, in a sweet way, take a step back, appreciate it. Know that a lot of love and care and intention was put into establishing and nourishing these relationships that you have with other people. And yeah, take it in, take it in. But that's the last card.
I love it. I actually think that typically I give an astro of what's going on in the world, and I will give that, but I think it's actually funny how personal, I think my chart is a perfect embodiment of what you're saying. Because I have Scorpio in my a little bit of ninth house, a little bit of 10th house, and then I have Sagittarius in a little bit of 10th house, mostly in my 11th house. And so um, where I have Scorpio has to do with feeling like I belong in the world. And what's my place in the world? What's my relationship to the world, especially in regards to power? What's my relationship to my power in the world's power over me, etc. And the 11th house has to do with the social collective as a whole, like our relationships on like a grand scale. So I always like to liken it to like public facing social media or like parasocial relationships or just like really big picture social relationships. And so I, I've talked about this before, but I came from a hometown that made me really angry. I was constantly the only person that cared about social justice issues, especially international social justice issues. Um, and I didn't really feel like anybody else cared, and I didn't really feel like I connected with anybody else because that was something that I cared so much about. And like I said, I was channeling all my anger into caring about those things. So I felt really disconnected from everybody else. And I just had so much rage, that I was directing. I don't think I was directing it at people, but I felt it. I was holding it for sure. And then I also kind of like felt that way a little bit about the astrology community, where I felt like, predictive astrology, we talked about it. We have a whole episode, episode 6 dedicated to our beef with predictive astrology and, how harmful that I think it can be. And I think that the way that social media is interacting with astrology as a theory of knowledge is replicating the harm that predictive astrology can cause in a way that is like predictive astrology by itself is not harmful, but the way that social media interacts with it to amplify with algorithms that's kind of fear mongering, that's like exacerbating everybody's anxiety, it really upsets me. And so I was just holding all this anger and rage, and I was really sitting with all my resentment and not letting it go anywhere. And then I was like, okay, like I need to get over this and I need to just do something about it. I'm so tired of complaining about what I feel like my hometown community is missing when it comes to the world. I'm so tired of, you know, talking to myself because, nobody in the astrology community is engaging with these points that I'm making. So like I'm so tired of like feeling like I'm getting nowhere, trying to advocate for what I'm arguing with astrology. Why don't I just start my own practice? Why don't I just instead of, what not to do, I should be modeling what to do instead. And I didn't know what was going to come out of starting my astrology business, but ultimately the thing that really came out of it was a community. I mean, it just blew my mind that I could meet so many people from literally all over the world. I've read for people in every continent except for Antarctica and I guess the North Pole if you want to get technical, but I've read for, people everywhere. And they're all people who really resonate with what I'm putting out there. And it took me, you know, burning through that resentment and taking action and taking consistent action to model what I would like to see anyway, or instead in the social collective. And what that did was cultivate a community of people that, really mess with what I'm doing and really see things in a similar light as me. And, maybe we don't share all the same opinions and values, 100%, but it's people that I am in honest and genuine community with. And that's changed my life. And I wouldn't have this if I was still stuck in the resentment. And so I think it's like the perfect embodiment of what Stevie's saying with this card is just like, you know, there is a world that exists beyond all of these heavy feelings. And there is a community out there for you beyond all these heavy feelings. And the only way that you're going to be able to reach something like that, whether that's new people, in my case, it was new people, but to a certain extent, also people in your life, deepening the relationships that you have with the people in your life, is if you move through those heavy feelings and model the way that you want to be in engagement with people instead. So if you're having a really hard time holding space for your own anger, what does it look like to hold space for somebody you trust's anger? Like I know for me, modeling, I had a really healthy expression model. I think I talked about it in like the second or third episode when we talk about friendship. But like, one of my best friends is like really good at modeling anger and really good at showing what a healthy relationship to anger looks like. And shocking nobody, she's a Sagittarius rising. It was definitely a huge inspo for why I wanted to talk about the anger during Sag season. But um just understanding, you gotta burn through it and you gotta the through it is the important thing. You gotta understand that you're bigger than that there is a world around you that's bigger than that, and that you belong in that world. And so don't let anything hold you back from being able to be there because it's worth it. So try to get creative if you can, and what can you do differently to move through the heaviness, move through the anger, through the resentment, and reach, a new world, a new way of relating to people on the other side. What I would say.
Wow.
Yeah.
Who knew an episode about anger could be so uplifting and,
Yeah.
and loving?
Yeah. I hope that comes across because really try to enjoy this next 2 weeks of more uplifting energy, and don't worry too much about getting things done and checking off the to-do list. I know it's holiday season, and just really try to be here and enjoy this energy because it's special. Yeah. Any final
Yay.
thoughts, Stevie?
No, no. I'm just, yeah, smooth brain.
Yeah, I love it. This was hard for us, so please don't leave us hanging. Let us know your thoughts. If this is hard for you to listen to, let us know that. We would love to know. If you have, really good relationship to anger, if you have a really good relationship to all this stuff that we named that we struggle with, we would love to hear it. So if you have any insight you want to offer the community on this topic, we will definitely read it out. If you want to send it to, bleedingheartsclub.pod@gmail.com, or DM us on Instagram at bleedingheartsclub.pod. We would love to hear it. So please don't hesitate to reach out. It would mean a lot to us as people who are, you know, putting ourselves outside of our comfort zone to be in community with you all. We would love to be in community, not anonymous, or you can be anonymous, but just like, we feel like we're shooting this into the void, and it's always lovely when the void shoots back. So, um, yeah, we will wrap it up then. I guess you can find me on all social media platforms at Shrootrees. That's SHRUTREES. And I do offer astrology readings. If you're interested in booking one with me, you can find the link to do that in the show notes. We do offer a joint reading together, me and Stevie. It's called Dance with Datura, where we basically look at the tarot and the astrology together of whatever, is going on in your life, whatever question you have. And we're able to give you a lot of clarifying context and hold really transformative space for you to feel safe to bloom, even in the darkness of what you're going through, and find ways to embody that change and see that transformation of what you'd like to see in your life. So you can find that link to book in our show notes, and feel free to DM or email us if you have any questions about the reading. And where can people find you, Stevie?
Yeah, okay. If y'all are interested in a virtual tarot or Reiki session, I'm gonna link the booking link in the show notes. Yeah, y'all can find me on Instagram and TikTok, technically at cosmic.return. I say technically TikTok because honestly, I don't really post on there. I just repost what we post on the Bleeding Hearts Club TikTok account. So you could be on there. Maybe I'll add a little collage video moment one day. But yeah, that's me.
Love it. Well, we want to let you know we have one more episode that we're doing to round out this year. And then your overextended tarot and astrology readers are going on break. Like, we are not taking breaks from readings, but we do want to take a break from this podcast to properly recharge, and that we will see you back mid-Jan. So we do have one more episode, and we will keep it very horoscope oriented so that you don't feel like you've been left hanging during that period of time. You will kind of be equipped to navigate this transition. And then we will see you again bright and beautifully in January, where we will be giving you our little surprise that we've been teasing. We will roll that out properly in January. So um, thanks for being here, y'all, and we'll see you next time.
See you next Tuesday, y'all. Bye.
Bye.